Thanks very much, Ceann Comhairle, and I'm very glad to have the opportunity to discuss this very important issue. I think that the Minister would agree with me that what we're dealing with here is an injustice in relation to scenarios whereby a defined benefit pension scheme is wound up and the existing pensioners, as a result of the manner in which our pension and taxation laws are levied, are given no option but the purchase of an incredibly expensive annuity, which certainly doesn't do that person or their families any good and really just makes the insurance companies an awful lot of money. So really the purpose of this issue here is to look at what is the source of the problem and what can we do in order to rectify that. And I think the case was very aptly summed up by the supplementary Aer Lingus pension scheme that we had discussed here previously, when the trustees wrote out to existing pensioners and made the points that they were going to, in order to protect the existing pensioners' funds, they were going to go out to the insurance companies in the markets and get an annuity. Nothing else was being entertained, just an annuity. And in this one instance, which I think brings it home, a woman was told that the cost of that annuity for one person was going to be €300,000. So €300,000 was being taken out of the wound-up scheme to buy the annuity for that person. Now, we inquired today from an Irish insurance company and got a quote on a joint life annuity that allowed for annual inflation of 1.4%, and the quote this morning was €5,000 per year. So if you think about it, if this person lived for 40 years and got the €5,000 a year, which is not going to happen in a pension scenario, that insurance company is going to benefit to the tune of €100,000 for nothing. On top of that, they get €6,000 or 2% of the purchase annuity price in fees. Meanwhile, the recipient, if they die, their spouse gets nothing. Unlike an approved retirement fund, which is not an option that's available to these people, which would allow them to get a far greater yield for their retirement years, would allow their family, a spouse or children in a situation possibly benefit from some of that income later on. So what we have is a really bad value for money product being imposed on members of pension schemes, and the excuse given for that is, well, that's the way the legislation is. And I know it mightn't be just the Minister's department that legislation is in, that it might be in the Department of Finance. Frankly, I don't care. I think it's all of our responsibility now to immediately address that situation. And I would put it to the Minister that it is interesting that back in 2011, the Minister for Finance altered the rules to allow pre-retirement bonds invest in ARFs because of the outrageous cost of annuities at that time, but didn't extend that option to defined pension schemes. Last year, we know the rules were again altered, so that would allow defined benefit scheme members access to an ARF. But guess what? Only in cases where you're classified as a director of a company. So rich people can benefit from that arrangement, but actually pensioners who pay into a defined benefit scheme all their working lives can't. They're frog-marched into an annuity where the pension industry takes the excess cash and takes a huge price for the privilege, and it's only really wealthy people who would benefit from that. So I suppose what I'm appealing to you, Minister, is we urgently need to address the weaknesses in the present legislation and deal with this, because it's affecting the livelihood of people in their retirement years.
Ara has 4 minutes.
I'll ask you to humour me, right, because I have to read this bit out before I get to the bit that actually you're waiting for. So just to tell the Deputy, first of all, thanks for raising this, and I know exactly why she's raising it, but just to say that schemes trustees have duties and responsibilities under trust law, under other relevant legislation and under the Pensions Act 1990 as amended. The duties of a pension scheme trustee includes administering in trust in accordance with the law and the terms of the trust deeds and rules. So consequently, any decisions made by corporate or individual trustees of an occupational pension scheme are governed by the relevant legislation and the rules set out in the trust deed and the rules of the particular scheme. So some schemes trustees must always act in the best interests, should be all trustees should act in the best interest of their scheme members. So usually the options available to members for taking benefits will be set out in the trust rules, and in some cases the benefit structure may be inflexible, leaving the member little or no choice as to the form which his or her benefits will take, as I recently brought to your attention and you kindly helped me with, although there wasn't any help that we could provide. But where a member of a pension scheme reaches retirement age, a pension is immediately payable. Part of the pension may be taken in cash, and once the entire pension is not taken up entirely by this, the trustees then have a liability to pay a pension income to the member. The trustees then either pay a pension income out of the fund on a regular basis or buy an annuity to secure the future liability to pay a pension. And on wind-up, the pension is being paid out of the fund. The trustees normally purchase annuities for the existing pensioners. Section 48 of the Pensions Act sets out the priorities on winding up a scheme. It sets out the order in which the liabilities must be discharged and also how they may be discharged for members. When a scheme winds up, Section 48(3)(b provides that the trustees may, notwithstanding anything else contained in the rules of the scheme, and without the consent of the member concerned, discharge the liability for benefits payable for any member by one of the following: transferring the benefits of each member into a new pension scheme, purchasing an approved assurance policy with the company or insurance agency that sells life insurance, or 3, transferring the benefits into another arrangement for the provisions of the retired benefits, for example a PRSA or a buyout bond. So it must be noted that this discretionary provision and the trustees are not compelled to discharge the liability in this way. The wind-up options in Section 48(3)(b are contingent on the requirement of the scheme's policies or contracts are approved by the Revenue Commissioners under the Tax Consolidation Act 1997 as amended. This Act sets out the circumstances in which retirement benefit schemes are approved by the Revenue Commissioners for tax purposes. In other words, transfers from the scheme in wind-ups must be made into the schemes or products approved by the Revenue Commissioners and therefore complying with the rules. Section 722 of the Tax Consolidation Act allows for flexible options on retirement, the ARF option, and the purchase of an ARF is not available to members of defined benefit schemes subject to certain exceptions. Legislation and policy in this relation to taxes and access to ARFs are, as the Deputy has said, a matter for the Department of Finance. So, finally, the line that you're waiting for. I totally know why you're bringing up this, and actually, I do agree with you. So what I've asked my department is to refer this particular issue on to the Department of Finance, and particularly in light of the fact that in the next couple of weeks we're going to launch a public consultation on probably the most far-reaching reform of both the private and the public pensions industry. I think it's probably timely that the Department of Finance looks at this, and that's the effort that I will be trying to bring to bear during the coming weeks.
The delay is 2 minutes.
Thanks, Concordia, and thanks, Minister. And I think this is beyond overdue, and I think it is an issue that's not the responsibility of any one department or even member of the House. All of us have got to get our act together in terms of pensions, and I think probably because they're structured in a manner which makes them incredibly cumbersome to understand, mind-numbingly boring, that people just hear pensions and they switch off. And sadly, they wake up in their retirement years to find out that something that they paid into all their lives is not worth what they thought it would be, and their families are impoverished at a time when they should be enjoying a better standard of living. Now, no matter what acts are involved in this, be it acts that are under the control of the Tax Consolidation Acts or pension legislation, the reality is that the restriction exists. And as you say, it could appear, and it sounded like in some of the reply, that there was a choice. But what we're talking about here is, in the case of a wind-up of defined benefit schemes, there is no choice, and people don't have access to an approved retirement fund, which will be way better for them. So that's the nugget, if you like, that we have to fix and come up with a fix quick enough. I don't know how long. I know public consultation processes can take a very long time, and hopefully this would be done expeditiously. I think it should be a fix at the Act along the lines of the fact that previously, in recognising what bad value for money annuities are, that the rules were already changed by the Department of Finance in previous years in various statutory instruments and revenue briefings, which allowed them to alter the situation for the benefit of pensioners. I think that could be done possibly even immediately, pending the review of the scheme, which I think is necessary, and I appreciate the fact that your department is going to liaise with the Department of Finance and that we can all expedite this as quickly as possible.
Thanks for observing the time.
Thanks, Claire. Just to let you know, it's not about shirking my responsibility. The two acts that need to be changed don't come under my department, they come under the Department of Finance, and that's why I will refer to the Minister for Finance. And to tell you, I did mention during the preamble that there are exceptions made in exceptional circumstances, but that doesn't appear to happen in reality, because you know the exceptional circumstances that I was talking about, and there is no exemptions for that. So I don't know how that works in practice. But what's clear to me is that the existing measures do not suit all of the people that the legislation is supposed to cover, and it is exceptionally restrictive on the cases of those people who just need an income on a weekly basis and don't need to wait on the never for some magic gold pot that they might never get to. The public consultation that I hope to launch in the next couple of weeks won't take any longer than 3 months, because otherwise it's not worth doing it. We need to move swiftly on this and move together to make sure that we meet the changes not only in the state pensions but also the private pension funds that need to be responsible for looking after people. So I can give you my word that I'll give it immediate action. I'll talk to Pascal about it and we'll try and include it in the public con.